Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I am here with the update for my Panda palette. This is one of my favorite projects to do, not just this year but in general. I just love finishing eyeshadows, and I feel like this is such a good project for it because you do kind of continuously working on the same palette throughout the year. At least that's how I do it. Which means you get to see a lot of progress on your palette. So I have my two palettes right here. I am trying to finish my soft glam palette, which I worked on last year, and in combination with that this year is because I already had so many finished shades. I also made a BYOP with, I think it's 12 shadows that I am trying to finish alongside the palette. So I'm gonna jump into the video, but before I do so, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you in the family. Let's jump into the video. Alright, so we're going to start off with my soft glam palette, which again is kind of like my main Panda palette, I guess. It's the one that I completely want to finish this year. And again, I worked on this one last year. I had 7 finished shades, so I finished half of the shades in this palette, and now I'm just continue working on it. I'm going to roll the footage of what this one has been looking like. You can see which shades here were still in the palette at the beginning of the year. However, I did go ahead and franken some of this palette after introducing it, just because I wanted to have some more lighter shades, transition shades, stuff like that in the palette. So that is what it's been looking like. I have of course been working away on this palette, and I was able to finish up the shade Sienna. I believe it was the first update, maybe second. So that is another shade completed. So now I only have 6 left of the original shades, plus of course the Frankens. And the Frankens have been getting quite a lot of use. I've been definitely neglecting the deeper shades in this palette and focusing more on those lighter shades, as you can see throughout the months. But I was kind of expected, and that's also why I decided to do those Franken shades, just because I knew that those would be easier for me to reach for. This is what the palette looked like last month. So again, as you can see, I do have pan on majority of the Franken shades. I believe there was only one shade that I didn't have pan on, but overall the palette was looking quite loved. And this is what it looks like today. So there is some big changes, as you can see. You can see that I was able to hit pan on that final Franken shade, which I'm happy with. That was actually one of my goals. I was also able to finish one of my Franken shades, which I also wanted to do, so I'm very happy to see that. But let me talk you through this palette and the usage throughout it. Yes, so we'll have the comparison pictures of course up here, but this is the palette now. So as you can see here, it's definitely looking more loved again. I feel like as soon as you finish up some of those Franken shades, it starts looking a bit more loved, because technically, you know, a lot of these shades on this side is already technically finished. So there should be a lot more silver in here than there is at the moment. But again, let me talk you through the usage for this palette. So the first shade in the palette is in the space of Tempera, and this one is a Franken shade between Orange Soda and Lusty Rose. So this shade right here and this shade right here, no sorry, this one right here. So this one and this one created that shade there. And it's a really nice kind of neutral but warm toned brown that has been super easy to reach for in my crease, stuff like that. And I have been reaching for this one quite a lot more in the past month. I have 8 uses on it for a total of 18 in the year. And yeah, you can see the pan is now getting quite large. So that is the first shade. I'm going to breeze over the next shade because actually I haven't used it at all. That is a mix between Mulberry and a cream shade. And yeah, no uses there, but I have 11 uses on it in total throughout the year. Then we have Orange Soda, which is another one that I have not reached for. That is one of the original shades in the palette. So yeah, no uses here. I actually only have 1 use on it this year, but there is some reasons for that. But yeah, for now I'm just going to skip over it because I haven't used it in the past month. However, next to that we have a big change, because there used to be a Franken shade right here, and that was a shade that was Cypress Umber mixed with a cream shade again. And as you'll be able to see here, I was completely able to finish this shade. It did take me 30 additional uses to finish that shadow, for a total of 65 in the project. And this was like a cool tone brown. It is the shade that I majority of the time used in my brow, so that's how I got use out of it the most. And then also sometimes in my crease or low lash line, stuff like that, but a majority in my crease. So it took me, I don't know if I said already, it took me 65 uses in total to finish that up. And what I do when I finish a Franken shade is I actually add those uses into whichever shade I have Franken. So that would be 65 additional uses into this shade, plus that beige shade which I actually have in my Franken palette, which I'll talk, or BYOP, which I'll talk about in a second. But yeah, very, very happy to see that done. But let's move on to the rest of the palettes. So these two here were already empty. So we have Mulberry next, which I have not used, so no additional uses. I have 3 uses on it this year so far. Then we have another original shade to the palette, which is Dusty Rose, and this again I haven't used in the past month, but I have 8 uses total on it in this year. However, next to that we do have a Franken shade, and that is the only one that did not have pan on it, and my goal was to hit pan, which you can see that I was able to do. So this one actually took me 8 uses in total to hit pan on. It took me 7 additional uses this past month, but I have used 8 times in total this month, so 1 additional use after hitting pan, just to expand it a little bit more. So I'm now sitting at 9 uses on it total. So I'm really, really happy because that means that the last Franken shade in here has pan. And you know, it's going to be easy kind of to see the progress on that shade now once I have hit the bottom. Then we have one of my favorite shades in the palette, which is another Franken shade now, and that is this one right here. This is a mix between Rustic, which is right here, and then a cream shade again. And I have used them quite a lot since I made that shade, but this past month I only reached for 3 times. I was more focused on this shade here and then this other Franken, just because I wanted to get some more good progress on those 2 shades. But I have reached for it 3 additional times for a total of 17 uses in the project this year. Then, like I said, we had Sienna here, which I have finished up earlier this project. It took me 162 uses in total to finish that one up. And then we have Rustic, which I have used 3 times, so a couple uses there. I have reached for it 10 times in total this year, so that is where this one is sitting. We do have Cypress Umber, which I have reached for once, for a total of 5 uses in the project this year. And again, I did use all of this one to Franken, and that is now completed, so 65 additional uses have been added to this shade, which is a lot. And then lastly in the palette we have Noir, which is a black shade. I'm not focusing on finishing that shade. I am going to be okay if that is the last one standing, but the rest of the palette I do want to finish this year. And with Noir I have not reached for it at all in the past month. But that is what this palette is sitting right now. I'm very, very happy with the progress on this one. I am, however, going to make some changes to this palette again in the next coming days. I might even film it today, we'll see. But since I have finished up my brow shade in this palette, I do want to re-Franken that because it's been very useful to reach for every single day, and I think it's a good way to use up Cypress Umber because it's such a deep shade and I don't reach for deep looks very often anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and make some new Franken shades, and I do have some plans, so I will make a video on that, which should go up in a couple of days. I'm not gonna wait to post it for too long, but yeah, one of the shades that I want to do is use this one to make a new brow shade, and I also actually want to make a new version of this to use Dusty Rose and Orange Soda, and I will try to use majority of those 2 shades. I will use this one as a reference because I really like this shade. And I will make a new Franken, try to make it exactly like that one because again it's a really, really beautiful shade. And I will do the same with this shade right here. Again, I said that was one of my favorites. I use Rustic for that one and a cream shade, and I'll try to make a similar shade to that one as well, so that I have that in the palette. And with that, I will have some goals for this one, which I'll talk about later. But yeah, that is kind of my game plan for this palette for now. If you want to see me Franken everything in here, you can check out that video, which again will be up in a couple of days, and then I will take the footage of this palette so you can see kind of what it looks like at the next update, just with the comparison pictures too. But yeah, that is what this one is sitting right now. Let me move on to the BYOP. So for the BYOP, I'm going to roll the footage of what this one has been looking like. It does have, like I said, 12 shades in it. It has 9 full-size shades as well as 3 ColourPop shadows, which fits on the side. And this one is mainly filled with kind of like indie, sparkly, shimmer shadows, because I feel like I want to get more use of these. And also with these shadows, they are almost like dupe to a lot of other things in my collection, which is why I wanted to get through them. But yeah, you can see again what it's been looking like. You might have been able to see that I used some of that cream shade in my Franken, so you can see that at the very kind of early on in the progress videos. and that is the one that I was referring to when I said the cream shadow in my other palette. But yeah, you should be looking right now at what this palette looked like last month. So I did have pan on majority of these shades apart from 2. So I did have a goal to try to hit pan on those final 2 shades in the past month, and then just get some use out of this palette overall. And this is what this one looks like today. So you can see there is some differences, which I'm happy about. I will talk you through again the usage in a second, but I'm very, very happy with where this palette is sitting right now. It definitely looks quite a lot more loved. So yes, this is the palette, so you can see the overview, and as you might be able to see, I was able to hit pan on those final 2 shades that I was chasing pan on, but again, I will talk you through all of the usage and each shade in order right now. So first up in the palette, we do have this shade right here called Cinnamon Sugar from Terra Moons. I have not used that one at all in the past month, so keeping over that one. We do have this shade here called Pale Cascovy, and I have reached for that one once, so a little bit of use, nothing too much. I have used that one quite a lot early in the year, so I've been stacking off with it a little bit, but one use this past month. Then we have this shade right here, which is called Bismuth from the Pastel Roses, and that one I have not reached for either this past month, so nothing there. However, this shade right here, which is called Bombawi, and this one is from Glam Shop, I have reached for quite a lot. I'm hoping you can see some pan expansion on that shade. I actually reached for it 9 additional times in the past month, so again, quite a lot, and I'm hoping again you can see some pan expansion. Then we have the center shade, which is called Starlight. This one is from the Pastel Roses again, have not reached for. I was focusing on other shades the past month, and one of those is this one right next to it, which is actually quite similar to Starlight. Not exactly the same, but yeah, they are a little bit similar, and that one is called Laser, and it's from Glam Shop again, and that one I reached for 5 additional times in the past month, and as you can see, I was able to hit pan on it. It did take me 6 uses in total to hit pan on it, and I have reached for it 1 additional time after that, which is actually today. I'm wearing that one as my shimmer shadow today, just to expand that pan a little bit and continue getting some use out of it. But yeah, very, very happy with that, and that is another pan in this palette. Then we have another Glam Shop shade down here, which is also one that I wanted to pan on. This is the shade Vegas Biz, which I was able to pan on after 13 uses in the project, which was 8 additional uses in the past month. So that is this one right here, and I have not used it since I pan on it, but yeah, very happy with where it's sitting right now. Then we have this shade here, which I have reached for 6 additional times. This is the shade Starburst from the Pastel Roses. Again, I'm hoping to see a little bit of pan expansion on that shade. And then the last of these kind of full-size pans, we have this one here, which is actually a depotted shade. It is from NYX. It was originally from the In Your Element Air palette, and I have reached for that one 5 additional times in the past month. But on top of that, we also have the Franken uses now. So I'm counting 65 uses into this one from that Franken shade that I finished. But yeah, that is that one right there. Again, I'm going to use a lot of this shade in Frankens when I do the Franken sessions. This one's going to look very different next month. Then with the 3 Colourpop shades here on the side, it's going to be very quick because I actually haven't reached for any of them this past month, so no uses there. So yeah, that is this palette right here. It is definitely a little bit less used than normal, but I did go away on travel this past month, which meant I didn't bring this whole thing. I only brought a couple of shades, so that means that some of them are completely untouched. I also have been very focused on hitting pan on some of these shades, which meant that I didn't reach for the other ones as much. So yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed with this palette this past month. I feel like I could have done more, but yeah, I think I'm still doing okay. So that is this palette right here. I'm going to go ahead and talk through my goals with this palette and my Soft Glam palette. But before I do that, I'm going to talk you through the weight of both of the palettes. Alright, so we do have my Soft Glam palette first, which I'm going to talk through initially. So this palette at the introduction in 2024 weighed 162.70 grams, and it has an advertised weight of 10.36 grams. But at the beginning of 2025, so when I introduced the palette this year, it weighed 156.09 grams, which means that I had a remaining kind of amount to use up as 3.75 if I want to finish what is advertised in the palette. And that means that I have to finish 0.31 grams per month in order to be on track. So after frankening the palette, so adding some shades in, again mainly that base shade, the palette weighed 156.48 grams. So that is kind of my starting point in January. And my January use was 0.36 grams, my February use was 0.10 grams, and my March use was 0.11 grams, which means that my Q1 use altogether was 0.57 grams, which meant that I was a little bit behind, but it is what it is. I feel like this palette fluctuates a lot in weight. I don't think the weight for this one is very accurate, which I'll cover in a second. But my last month's weight was 155.91 grams. And today the palette actually weighs 155.95 grams, which means that the palette has gained 0.04 grams. And as you can see, I've finished a shade, I hit pan on a shade, and I have used this palette overall, but it still has gained weight, which is why, kind of what I mean with that I don't think the weight is very accurate. I feel like that kind of felt packaging like adheres, it takes a lot of moisture in, so I feel like if it's more humid, stuff like that, the weight will just automatically go up. So it is what it is, but I did actually gain weight this month, so I'm trying not to look at the weight for this palette very much. I'm just trying to get as much use out of it as I can, rather than focusing on the specific weight, but that is where it's sitting today. Then we have my BYOP, and this one I don't have an advertised weight because I didn't have the advertised weight of all of the shades, so some of them were used quite a lot. But at the introduction, this one weighed 155.73 grams. And again, I used some of this palette for those Frankens in my Soft Glam palette. And after I did that, the weight was 155.24 grams. So that is kind of my starting point again for this palette. And in January, I used 0.66 grams. In February, I used 0.55 grams. In March, I was able to use 0.53 grams, which means that my Q1 weight was 1.74 grams for this palette, which I think is pretty damn good. So I'm very happy with that. And at the last update, this palette weighed 153.50 grams, so that is my last month's weight. And today this palette weighs 153.30 grams, which means I was able to use up 0.20 grams. So it is definitely my lowest month, but that is also expected because I feel like I didn't use this palette as much as I have been. And it's something that I definitely need to focus on for the next coming months because I don't want to slack off with this palette. So yeah, that is kind of my weight. And this month the total weight between both of the palettes is going to be very, very low because again, one of them gained weight, the other one I didn't do too well with. So the total weight used up in April was 0.16 grams, but again, I'm taking that with a pinch of salt. But that is the weights. Before I wrap up this video, I'm also going to just talk you through the goals for both of the palettes. Alright, so we're going to start off with the Soft Glam palette. So with this one right here, since I do want to do some frankening in here, I do have some goals to finish some of the existing Frankens. So I have already mentioned, but I want to make a duplicate shade of this one here and this one here. And because of that, I do actually want to finish off both of these shades. I want to allow myself to reach for those ones as crease shades. They're going to be really good everyday shades. And that will be my main goal for this palette, is just to finish those two Frankens so that I can continue working on the new ones for the rest of the year. And I will try to make a decent amount of both of those shades again because I do like it so much. But yeah, that is my goals for this one. Quite simple, but those two Frankens I want gone. And then for this palette right here, I now have pan on everything and I don't think I'm very close to finishing anything. This shade here, again, I don't know what's going to happen with that one. I'm going to use a decent amount of that one for the frankening, so that one might be close to being done, but I'm not going to put in a goal to finish it yet. However, I do want to put in quite a big goal for this one, and that will be to get quite a lot of use of this one throughout. So I was thinking about it. I think right now combined between all of these shades, I'm sitting around like 30 uses in the past month, but it's very, very low. I was thinking maybe I should put like, I want to use this palette like 50 uses combined between all of the shades. But I might want to push that a bit further. I feel like 100 uses would be too much. But I also feel like I need to push myself with this palette, and I need to catch up on some of the weight. Would 100 uses be doable? Since, I mean, there's like 31 days, isn't it, in May? So that would be almost 3 shadows per day from this palette, which is quite a lot. but I should be able to do it, I think. And I also feel like if I use some of these as nail polishes, that would be a decent amount of uses too. So I think I'm going to put in a goal of using all of these shades combined 100 times. I will not count any finished Franken use from this one in, because I have a goal to finish one of the Frankens that was made with that shadow. So I'm not going to count that into the usage, but overall in this palette I do want to get 100 uses throughout all of the shades. And that will be again like around 3 shadows per day, which is again quite a lofty goal, but I do want to start getting some use out of this palette right here. And that, you guys, is going to be it for my Panda palette update. I'm excited to kind of film this and then get going with the Frankening. I'm very, very excited to Franken my Panda palette again. I feel like it's going to create some good use on those deeper shades, and it's also going to just get my creativity going, so I'm very excited for that. And again, that video should be up in, I don't know if it's going to be within a week or 2 weeks maybe, but you won't have to wait very long for it. But yeah, I hope you guys are having an amazing day wherever you are, and I will catch you in my next one. Bye guys.